State your call signs. General Abrams's voice cut through the air like a blade against steel. The room, lined with cold metal and the hum of fluorescent lights, fell into strict silence. A long conference table stretched before him, littered with mission files, steaming mugs of untouched coffee, and a dozen pairs of expectant eyes. The walls bore maps of the Kunar region, jagged mountain outlines drawn in red grease pencil. Dust motes floated in the thin rays of morning light sneaking through narrow windows. It was barely dawn, yet the command center pulsed with restless tension, as though everyone inside could already sense what this mission would cost. One by one, the operatives stood and answered. Falcon 1, Razor 2, Nomad 3, Echo 4. Each name rolled off with the ease of men too used to their own importance. Their voices filled the air with the quiet arrogance of confidence, of belonging. Then the last figure at the table rose, a woman in a pressed field uniform. Posture precise, her expression unreadable. Her hands were gloved, her eyes hidden behind regulation-clear lenses that caught the sterile light of the room. There was no patch on her arm. No insignia, no hint of what unit she came from. A faint whisper ran along the table's edge. Support staff? One of the captains muttered under his breath. Probably intel liaison, another replied with a smirk. Or admin. The low laughter that followed broke the tension. Brittle, condescending. General Abrams' gaze lifted from the file in front of him. His voice hardened. Call sign operative. No answer. The woman stood still, her boots perfectly aligned with the steel floor grid, her eyes locked forward, not in defiance, but in discipline. Silence stretched too long, making even the hum of the overhead lights feel deafening. Lieutenant, the general repeated, slower this time. Your call sign. She blinked once. Then her voice, calm, clear, carrying the weight of years, filled the air. Specter 6. Every sound in the room stopped. Chairs froze mid-creak. Pens halted above paper. The murmurs died as though cut off by a blade. Even the faint rattle of ventilation seemed to quiet, as if the base itself understood the gravity of what it had just heard. General Abrams's hand, halfway to his coffee, paused mid-air. His eyes narrowed. Repeat that. Specter 6, she said again, softly this time, as though naming something sacred. The words seemed to hang there, echoing against the steel and glass. Several officers exchanged confused looks. The younger ones did not understand, but the older men, the ones who had been in the mountains, did. Their faces drained of color. One whispered, barely audible. That call sign was decommissioned. Another shaking his head. It cannot be. She was KIA. The general leaned back silent. His eyes studied her face, the steady composure, the faint scar running from temple to jawline, the calm breathing of someone who had stared down death and did not flinch. He remembered the old reports. Lost patrol. Kunar Valley. Overwatch sniper. 27 hours pinned down. No reinforcements. No survivors except those she held alive from the ridge. Specter 6. The name had been sealed, buried, classified under operations no one was allowed to discuss. It belonged to the kind of mission that haunted even the men who signed it off. Now, standing before him, the ghost had a pulse again. The general's voice broke the stillness. That call sign was buried with ghosts. She did not answer. She only straightened slightly, as if acknowledging a truth, not a compliment. Across the table, one officer forced a nervous laugh. With respect, sir, that was just a legend, was it not? A story to boost morale. No one ever— The general cut him off sharply. Enough. The silence returned, heavier this time. The younger operatives looked between the general and the woman, uncertain whether they had just witnessed a reprimand or a revelation. Her gaze remained fixed ahead. She did not seek validation, nor did she explain herself. There was no pride in her tone, no need for reaction, only stillness. The general finally spoke, his voice lower, controlled. You are reassigned to Task Force Halberd. Briefing at dose 700. She gave a crisp nod, gathered her folder, and turned to leave. Her footsteps echoed down the corridor, soft, deliberate, unhurried, until the sound faded completely. When the door closed, a murmur rippled across the room. Specter Six. Impossible! What is she doing here? The general did not look up. His eyes remained fixed on the now empty doorway, his jaw tight. Slowly, he opened the folder she had left behind, blank pages, save for one faded photograph tucked inside. A sniper rifle rested against a rock face, sand crusted along its barrel. Behind it, a young soldier's shadow stretched across the ridge. No name, only a date scribbled in fading ink. Kunar, 2010. The general exhaled through his nose, closing the folder with quiet finality. "Gentlemen," he said, voice steady, "the ghost just came back to war." The officers exchanged uneasy glances, the weight of his words settling in their chests. Outside, the first light of morning crept over the horizon, bathing the tarmac in pale gold. A single helicopter waited, rotors still, and somewhere beyond those mountains, past the frost and the silence, the legend of Specter Six stirred again. The meeting dissolved, but the silence it left behind refused to fade. Down the corridor, officers moved in uneasy clusters, voices lowered to whispers that bounced off the steel walls. Someone mentioned the name again, Specter Six. Another warned them to keep it down. The base was alive with rumor, curiosity, and quiet fear. "Who the hell is she?" one lieutenant muttered. "Find her service record," said another, already typing into the restricted database. The glow of monitors reflected in their tense faces as they scrolled through files. The system returned only a single line of text across the screen. "Access denied. Level Alpha classification." They tried again using alternate clearance codes. Same result. Every record linked to the name Specter Six had been scrubbed, buried under layers of redaction. Even her personnel photo was replaced with a black rectangle and the words MIA, confidential. The youngest officer leaned back in his chair, frowning. How can someone in active service not exist? No one answered. The cursor blinked on the empty screen like a warning. In the general's office, the door was locked. The blinds were drawn, shutting out the sharp sunlight that burned across the runway outside. General Abrams sat behind his desk, elbows on the wood, eyes fixed on a single manila folder. Dust lined its edges. The label had faded with age. He had not touched it in years. Across the room, an old photograph hung framed, his unit from Afghanistan 2 decades earlier. Young faces, eager eyes. Among them, one empty space where a soldier had once stood before being cropped out at classification. The general's hand trembled slightly as he opened the folder. A faint smell of paper, oil, and time escaped like a ghost. Inside were reports stamped, "Top secret, eyes only." He turned each page carefully. Incident logs, intercepted transmissions, after-action summaries. Every line reminded him of a valley he had tried to forget. Kunar Province, 2010. Recon Unit, Specter Team. Status, partial loss, 1 survivor, redacted. His eyes stopped at the last document, a faded mission photo. A sniper crouched behind a rock outcrop, half her face hidden in shadow. The rifle barrel glinted under desert light. She was young, focused, unmoving, the calm in a storm of sand and fire. The name printed beneath was almost illegible, but the call sign was not. Specter Six. He remembered the radio chatter, the static, the moments before the world went silent. Radio log, June 19, 2010. Command, this is Viper 2-3. We are pinned down. Requesting Overwatch support. Static. Copy, this is Specter Six. I have eyes on hostiles. Holding elevation Bravo. Gunfire bursts. Specter Six, we have movement on ridge. Negative. That is me. Stay low. Wait for my mark. Silence. Then a single shot echoed, precise, unhurried. The general could still hear that shot in his memory. Clean, distant, final. He turned to the next page. Casualty report. Estimated enemy neutralized, 39. Confirmed Allied survivors, 11, Time held without relief, 27 hours. Operative status. Missing in action. Presumed KIA. He closed his eyes, jaw tightening. Presumed, he muttered. They never found her body because she refused to die. Back in the hallway, officers continued searching. Files locked. Terminals frozen. The name triggered silent alerts that none of them noticed. The kind that notified only one office, one clearance level, one man. Inside, the general's computer flickered alive with a new notification. Inquiry flag. Subject, Specter Six. He sighed, clicking the alert closed. He knew curiosity could kill careers faster than combat. The fewer who remembered, the safer it was, or so Command had told him years ago. But now the ghost they buried was walking their halls again. He reached into the bottom drawer of his desk and pulled out a smaller folder, edges frayed. On its cover, a handwritten title read, Specter Six, MIA. The paper inside had yellowed, the ink smudged. At the top of the first page, a younger version of his own signature authorized a containment of sensitive information. He hated that phrase. It was another way of saying lie to protect the living. His voice broke the quiet. You were never supposed to come back, he said softly, staring at the photograph. Not because you failed, but because we did. He leaned back, the leather chair creaking under the weight of memory. Outside his window, the base loudspeaker called for morning drills. Another day, another rotation, another generation who would never know her story. He took one last look at the picture, her face half in sunlight, half in shadow. The edge of her scope reflected the dawn over Kunar's mountains. Dust and smoke blurred the horizon behind her, but her eyes were clear, unwavering. In that single image, the general could still hear the storm, the crack of rifles, the rolling echo between ridges, the ragged breathing over the radio. He remembered the silence after her last transmission, the long hours of static before Command declared her lost. He whispered, barely audible, before she vanished. She held a mountain alone. The words lingered in the dim room like a prayer. He closed the file gently, sealing the past once more. But as the lock clicked shut, he knew it would not hold. Outside, the rumor of Specter Six continued to spread, down every corridor, across every unit, carried on whispers and uneasy glances. The living had woken the dead, and the dead had started to listen. The valley burned beneath a white sun. Heat shimmered off blackened rock, twisting the air into waves of mirage. The smell of diesel, cordite, and scorched sand hung thick enough to taste. Every breath stung. Every sound carried too far. A recon unit, 12 men, moved along a dry riverbed carved through the mountains of Kunar. Dust clung to their gear, sweat streaked through camouflage, and the weight of silence pressed on them like gravity. Then came the first shot. It cracked through the air with the violence of lightning. One man dropped instantly. No warning, no echo. Then the world exploded. Gunfire erupted from the ridges. Muzzle flashes bloomed like fireflies across stone. The squad dove for cover, scrambling behind fragments of broken wall. Radio chatter spiked into panic. Contact! Contact! Northwest Ridge! Multiple hostiles! We are pinned! Requesting overwatch, anyone copy? Through the chaos, a calm voice answered over the static. This is Specter Six. I have you. Up on the ridge, half a mile away, Corporal Lena Voss lay prone beneath the blistering sun. Her rifle rested on a bed of sandbags and shattered stone. Sweat ran down her neck, mixing with the dust until her skin looked carved from the same mountain she guarded. Her finger brushed the trigger guard, deliberate, patient. Through her scope, the world narrowed to breath and movement. Range 850. Wind 2 clicks west, she murmured to herself. The first target dropped before he ever saw her. Below, the pinned soldiers moved under her cover. Each burst of enemy fire was answered by one single precise reply, her bullet cutting through the noise like punctuation. Hours passed. The sun fell lower, then vanished. Shadows stretched across the ridges, hiding bodies, swallowing light. The battle did not stop. Their comms were failing. Battery dying. No backup, no drone feed. Only her eyes, her rifle, her heartbeat. At hour 13, their ammunition began to run out. At hour 19, medics were gone. At hour 23, only 6 men were still breathing. Still, her voice came through the static, unwavering, steady as a heartbeat in the storm. Stay low. Move when I say. Her spotter had been killed in the first hour. She spoke now to ghosts and echoes, keeping herself sane through routine and duty. She marked targets by memory, adjusted scope by instinct. When her bullets ran low, she stripped rounds from fallen rifles, cleaned them with her sleeve, and kept firing. A desert wind rose in the night, carrying the smell of smoke and iron. It whistled through broken glass and splintered bones. And still she stayed. One woman, one rifle, one ridge. Radio log, row 200 hours. Specter 6 to command, status update. Overwatch active. Enemy movement reduced by 70%. Requesting extraction coordinates. No response. Specter 6, repeat, requesting coordinates. Silence. She exhaled slowly, the kind of sigh that was neither frustration nor fear, just acceptance. She knew no one was coming, so she dug deeper into the mountain, reinforced her nest with the rocks around her, and kept her scope fixed on the valley below. Through the crosshairs, she saw one of her men crawling across open ground, dragging a wounded comrade. Enemy muzzle flash lit the ridge. Her shot arrived first. The man made it behind cover. His voice cracked through the comms, weak, grateful. "Whoever you are..." "Thank you," she did not reply. She just chambered the next round. By dawn, the air was cold again. The mountains were quiet, almost serene. Smoke drifted in thin ribbons through the canyon. The extraction team arrived in silence. 6 soldiers and a medic unit expecting to recover only bodies. Instead, they found her still at her post. Rifle steady, eyes open. For a moment, they thought she was dead. She had not moved for hours. But when the lead sergeant stepped closer, she spoke without turning. "Do not stand in the open," she said quietly. "They will see you," the sergeant froze. "Where are they?" She lifted her scope once more. "Nowhere," she said. "Not anymore." He looked out over the valley, the slopes littered with burned-out trucks, abandoned rifles, bodies scattered across the rocks. It was not a battlefield anymore. It was a graveyard. She finally rose, bones stiff, uniform torn, eyes bloodshot from sleeplessness. Her rifle was nearly out of ammunition. Her canteen had been empty since the night before. When they led her down from the ridge, she did not look back. She did not speak. One of the medics whispered to another, "How long was she up there?" The answer came from the radio log still clutched in her hand, timestamps scrawled in pencil. 27 hours. They tried to debrief her later, but she said little. No anger, no pride, no grief. Just one sentence, spoken in a voice that did not waver. "I never left my post." The commanding officer nodded slowly. "You became part of the mountain, Corporal." She did not respond. She was already gone inside her silence. She never left her post. She became part of the mountain. The words would echo in the valley long after her footprints were erased by wind. And far away, in some future war room yet to come, a general would hear that name again. Specter 6. And remember the woman who once held the earth together with nothing but a rifle and her will. The report was filed before dawn. Status, KIA, body unrecovered. Location, Kunar Valley, Afghanistan. Name, Corporal Lena Voss. Call sign, Specter 6. One more line in a stack of death notices. One more soldier gone. But the truth was never that simple. Hours after the extraction team carried the survivors down the ridge, another helicopter arrived. Unmarked, no flag, no unit insignia. It landed in silence, rotors slicing the dust into a fog. 2 men stepped out, black fatigues, no ranks, no names. They didn't speak to the medic or the sergeant. They didn't sign anything. They just pointed to the stretcher where Lena Voss lay half-conscious, barely breathing, blood soaked through gauze and dust. "We'll take it from here," one of them said. The medic frowned. "She's alive." "Command said..." "We know what command said," the man interrupted coldly. "You didn't see her." "You were never here." Before anyone could answer, she was loaded into the bird. The helicopter lifted, swallowed by the sky, and with it, her life disappeared. By the time the sun rose, her file was sealed. Every photograph, every mission log, every radio transcript, redacted in black ink. In the Pentagon database, Specter 6 was marked deceased in action, no funeral service. No ceremony, just a courier arriving at her family's doorstep with a folded flag and an apology rehearsed 1,000 times. "Your daughter died a hero." Her mother held the flag to her chest. Her father stared at the officer, his jaw trembling. "Where's her body?" The officer hesitated. The terrain made recovery impossible. That was the official story. The lie carved into stone. In truth, she woke 3 days later in a dimly lit medical bunker somewhere outside Bagram Air Base. A full lines ran from her arm to a humming machine. Her ribs were wrapped, her shoulder stitched, her pulse faint but steady. A man in a gray suit stood at her bedside. His voice was calm, too calm. "You were never here, Corporal." She blinked weakly, disoriented. "Where's my unit?" "Home, buried. You died saving them." He slid a folder onto the table, thin, almost empty. Inside was her own death report. "Officially, you're gone," he said. "Unofficially, we have other plans." Her throat was dry. "Why?" The man's eyes never blinked. "Because what happened in Kunar should never have happened. Wrong orders, wrong coordinates, wrong politics. If the press gets hold of it, it buries more than you. It buries a command structure. You understand?" She did. She always did. Soldiers didn't get to choose which truths survived. Weeks turned into months. Recovery bled into retraining. No insignia, no uniform. Just missions. They gave her no name, only designations. Asset, operator, ghost. She slipped between countries like smoke, a whisper in war zones, a face no one remembered twice. Every mission ended with silence and a new identity. No debrief, no recognition. Just orders delivered in rooms without windows. The woman who once fought for a squad now fought for shadows. She watched the headlines from afar. "Hero sniper's sacrifice saves 6. They called her brave, noble, gone. Each time she saw her own name printed beneath that word, KIA, it hollowed her a little more. She stopped counting birthdays, stopped writing letters, stopped hoping anyone remembered her face. Duty became her oxygen. Guilt became her gravity. One night, years later, in a safe house outside Kandahar, she found herself staring into a cracked mirror. A stranger looked back. Scars where sunlight used to live. Eyes trained to spot targets, but not themselves. She whispered the name they'd erased. Lena Voss. It sounded foreign, unfamiliar. A memory belonging to someone else. She closed her eyes and breathed in the silence. Somewhere far away, a family still prayed for her soul. A ghost they thought they'd buried. She opened her eyes again and said softly, almost to the mirror itself, "They buried me, but I never stopped breathing." Her handler appeared at the door, breaking the moment. "Next operation's ready. Same objective." She nodded, strapping on her gear. "Target?" "Classified." As always, he handed her a new passport. A new name. She didn't even look at it. "Does it ever bother you?" he asked quietly. She paused. "What?" "Living as a ghost." Her answer was almost a whisper. "Ghosts don't live. They endure. And with that," she walked into the darkness once more. One more mission, one more false life. Carrying the weight of the truth no one was allowed to speak. Somewhere in the archives of a forgotten war, a single page remained unshredded. A mission log signed only with a call sign and a date. Specter 6, Aero 3, 47 hours, objective, complete. No one knew who wrote it. No one dared to ask, but in the silence between wars, when the wind cut through broken valleys and the ground whispered the names of the fallen, hers always echoed a little louder, because buried truths don't stay buried forever. 15 years later, the world had changed. The wars had shifted names, the uniforms had changed patterns, but the soil of Kunar still breathed the same dust. Morning briefings filled the air base with the hum of screens, chatter, and coffee steam. Young officers scrolled through satellite images as if history had no pulse, no memory. To them, the Kunar Valley was just coordinates on a map, a zone of renewed instability. To her, it was a graveyard. Specter Six walked through the corridor in silence, her civilian ID clipped to a plain jacket. The tag read L. Voss, civilian advisor. No rank, no ribbons, no salute. Yet when she entered the command room, the air seemed to pause. Conversations dropped to a murmur. General Abrams stood at the head of the table, older now, face carved by years of decisions no one should have to make. His eyes met hers for a fraction of a second, long enough to say what protocol could not. "Welcome back, Ms. Voss," he said evenly. "Your expertise in long-range reconnaissance is appreciated." A young officer leaned back in his chair, whispering under his breath. "Expertise? She's a civilian now," another smirked. "We need combat tacticians, not consultants." Their voices were low, but the words carried. Lena heard every syllable. She didn't respond. She simply walked to the end of the table, unrolled the topographical maps, and studied the ridgelines in silence. Her fingers traced the valleys, the fault lines, the dried riverbeds, as if she were reading scars on her own skin. After a moment, she spoke quietly, her tone calm and factual. "You'll take fire here," she said, pointing to a bend in the contour. "And here, sniper nests line this ridge. If you move at dawn, you will not make it past the second crest." The young officer frowned. "With respect, ma'am, we have drone surveillance. There are no hostiles marked there." She looked up, eyes sharp but steady. "Some terrains remember their dead. Drones do not." The room fell silent. General Abrams cleared his throat. "Gentlemen, Ms. Voss has walked that ground, literally. You would do well to listen." He did not say how she had walked it, or why her name still lingered in the old classified files labeled Specter Six, MIA. That evening, as the base quieted, Lena remained in the operations tent long after the others left. The screens glowed in the dim light. Maps, weather patterns, live feeds. Her reflection shifted across them like a ghost overlaying the terrain. Kunar. The name itself pressed against her chest like a scar reopening. She zoomed in on the valley ridges, the same angles where she once aimed through her scope 15 years earlier. Every rock formation, every shadowed gully, every wind corridor. Familiar. Intimate. In the corner of the screen blinked a new tag. Insurgent resurgence confirmed. Same coordinates as 2010 skirmish site. She leaned closer, whispering to herself, "The ghosts are coming back." Outside, a pair of younger soldiers watched her from a distance. One nudged the other. "She barely talks. You think she was really a sniper? She's probably just some analyst with field trauma." Look at her, too calm. They didn't know calm was her armor. They didn't know silence had kept her alive longer than bullets ever could. General Abrams approached them, hands clasped behind his back. "You boys ever heard of Operation Specter?" They looked at each other, puzzled. "No, sir," he nodded slowly. "Good. Let it stay that way." Later that night, Lena sat alone at the edge of the runway, the wind lifting her hair, the smell of jet fuel thick in the air. Far off, mountains crouched against the horizon, black and unyielding. She reached into her jacket pocket and unfolded a small, creased photograph, the same one that once lay in her redacted file. A younger version of herself stared back, rifle slung across her shoulder, eyes shadowed but fierce. She traced the edge of the photo with her thumb. A soldier approached, Captain Rivera, one of the few who had treated her with quiet respect since she arrived. He stopped a few paces away. "You knew this place before, didn't you?" She did not answer. "They say this valley is cursed," he continued. "Too many units went missing. Too many stories no one writes down." Lena folded the photo and slipped it away. "Curses are just debts history has not settled yet." He studied her for a long moment. "You're not here for intel, are you?" Her gaze drifted to the mountains. "No, I'm here for closure." Inside the command center, Abrams watched from the window. His aide stepped up beside him. "Sir, why her?" "After everything," The general's eyes stayed fixed on her figure at the runway's edge. Because she's the only one who made it out of that valley alive, and maybe the only one who can go back. At dawn, the base stirred to life. Convoys rumbled, choppers spun up. Lena stood by the transport line, fastening her gear. She had been given no weapon, only clearance to advise. But she still wore her old glove, the one with the tear across the palm, the one she had worn the day she was declared dead. General Abrams approached, his tone low but firm. "This is not a combat role. You understand that?" She nodded once. Understood, but when he turned away, her voice stopped him. "If command buried the truth once, General, will they bury it again?" He looked at her in silence. "Not if you are the one digging it up." As the rotors thundered to life and the chopper lifted toward the valley that had both made and destroyed her, she looked out across the horizon, where ghosts of the past waited in the fog. Her reflection shimmered in the window's glass. Half alive, half legend, and for the first time in 15 years, she whispered her call sign aloud, not as a memory, but as a promise. "Specter 6, returning to post." Night draped itself over the base like a shroud. The hum of generators pulsed through the stillness, blending with the soft whir of distant rotors. Inside the operations tent, the light from flickering monitors painted shifting shadows across Lena Voss's face, fragments of a soldier who was supposed to be long gone. She sat alone at a metal table, her gear spread before her with ritual precision. Rifle disassembled, scope aligned, ammunition laid out in perfect rows. The smell of oil and steel lingered in the air, the scent of a memory she had tried to bury. Each movement was silent, deliberate. She cleaned the chamber, wiped the lens, checked the trigger spring twice. To anyone else, it looked mechanical. To her, it was communion. From a small pouch, she drew a strip of cloth, torn from her original combat uniform, faded to near white. She wrapped it around the rifle's grip, a reminder of the valley that took everything and still whispered her name in the wind. On the table lay her dog tags. They were bent and scarred, edges darkened from heat and shrapnel. She stared at them for a long moment before running her thumb across the engraved letters, Voss, Lena, M, Specter 6. Officially, those tags should not exist. According to the files, they had been recovered from the field with biological remains. She smiled faintly, the kind of smile that carried no warmth, only recognition of the irony that kept her alive. One by one, she loaded the bullets into a small box. Each was polished, checked, and balanced. Then, with a black marker, she drew a tiny cross on a single round, her tradition since Kunar, a round for the ghosts. Not for vengeance, for remembrance. The tent flap shifted. The faint scrape of boots against gravel. General Abrams entered, his silhouette framed against the cold blue light of the night outside. He looked older up close, the weight of too many wars pressing down behind his eyes. For a while, he said nothing, just watched her movements, the care, the familiarity. "You should not have come back," he said quietly. She did not look up. Neither should they. The words hung between them like smoke, sharp, quiet, impossible to clear. He stepped closer, voice lower now. "You were given a chance to disappear, Voss. Most soldiers never get that mercy. Why step into this again?" She set the rifle down and finally met his eyes. "Mercy is for the ones who sleep at night." "I do not," Abrams sighed, rubbing his temples. "This is not the same valley anymore. Different command. Different politics." She shook her head slowly. "Different names, same ghost." "You know that." He wanted to argue, but he could not. She was right. The same coordinates, the same enemy network rebuilt under new banners, the same soil soaked in the same blood. He turned toward the tent opening. "You know the rules. You are here as an observer, nothing more." "I know," she said. "Observers see everything others try to forget." Abrams paused, then looked back at her. For a moment, something almost human flickered in his expression. Regret. Maybe. Guilt. "You were never supposed to carry all this," she answered softly. "Then you should not have left me alive." He left without another word. When the tent fell quiet again, Lena exhaled slowly, her hand resting on the rifle stock. The wood was cold, heavy, familiar. She closed her eyes. The silence around her began to twist, faint whispers, old echoes. The valley had a way of speaking to her even from miles away. Radio static, gunfire, a voice from a past life. "Specter 6, do you read?" She opened her eyes. The tent was empty. Only the sound of the wind brushing against canvas remained. Outside, the night deepened. A line of storm clouds gathered over the mountains, their undersides glowing faintly with heat lightning. Thunder rolled in the distance, slow, deliberate, like artillery shells landing miles away. She stepped outside and looked toward the horizon. The air smelled of metal and rain, a reminder that every battle began with a breath like this. Around her, soldiers moved quietly through the camp, checking fuel lines, running diagnostics, smoking in silence. None of them spoke to her, but some glanced her way. There was something about her stillness that drew attention, even from those who did not know her name. She crouched by the armory wall, tracing a line in the dirt with the tip of a bullet. The wind tugged at her hair, carrying faint traces of diesel and storm. The valley remembers, she thought, and it waits. Hours passed. Midnight turned to the dark hours before dawn. The storm crept closer, lightning flashing behind the ridges. Shadows swayed across the tents. Lena sat against a crate, helmet in her lap, eyes closed. Not asleep, soldiers like her no longer slept. They only drifted between memories. Inside her head, the mountains of Kunar returned, the crack of a distant rifle, the scream of mortars, the metallic tang of fear mixed with dust. She could still feel the trigger's bite against her finger, the pulse of recoil, the endless silence after each shot. It was not revenge she felt stirring now. It was something deeper. Unfinished duty, a promise that no record could erase. The first drops of rain began to fall, tapping against the canvas roof, soft as the first beats of war. She opened her eyes, whispering to no one, or perhaps to the ghosts who always listened. At dawn, the past will breathe again, and in the thunder that followed, it almost sounded as if the mountains answered. The chopper blades cut through the night like whispers of metal and wind. Below, the mountains loomed, black, jagged silhouettes rising through a sea of fog. No moon, no stars. Just the low hum of engines and the tight breathing of men about to vanish into the dark. Specter 6 sat near the rear hatch, helmet on, eyes fixed on the map glowing dimly in her lap. Every ridge, every depression, every shadow burned into her memory. Kunar had not changed. Only the names of those sent to die here had. Captain Rivera gave the signal, a closed fist, raised and steady. The crew chief nodded, hand to the latch. "Insertion zone approaching. 30 seconds. The rotors slowed, pitch shifting to a whisper. The red interior light flickered across faces, some hardened, some young and pale beneath the gear. Specter said nothing. Her hand rested lightly on her rifle, index tracing the scar across the stock, her oldest companion. The chopper hovered for a heartbeat above the ridge. Then ropes dropped into the mist. Boots hit rock. The wind screamed around them. Within seconds, the team was on the ground, 8 figures swallowed by fog. "Team Iron Veil, all stations check." Rivera's voice came through the comms, muted by static. 2 up, 3 up, 4 up. Lena's voice followed, steady, controlled. "Specter 6, Overwatch, rear flank." She took position on a rocky outcrop, laying low, scanning through her thermal scope. The valley stretched before her like a breathing shadow, alive, shifting, too quiet. No animal noise. No wind through the brush, only the faint hum of static in her ear. Her instincts stirred, the same cold ripple that once crawled down her spine before every ambush. She whispered into comms, "Check your spacing." "This silence is wrong," Rivera replied. "Copy that." Proceeding with caution, the team advanced, 1 step at a time, rifles low, eyes searching. The fog rolled thicker, smothering sound. Through the scope, Lena scanned the far slope. Then a flicker, just for a second, a faint, unnatural gleam. not moonlight. A reflection. Her heart tightened. She adjusted the focus. There, half buried among rocks, a lens glint. Spotter at 10 o'clock, ridge height, 800 meters. Rivera froze. Say again? Laser mark confirmed. You're painted! A split second later, the night exploded. Rockets screamed out of the fog, ripping through silence like tearing steel. The blast lit the ridge in bursts of orange fire. Debris rained down. Ambush! Take cover! East Ridge! Bullets whined, ricocheting off stone. The fog turned to smoke. Voices overlapped in the comms. Shouts, static, pain. Specter moved without thought. Years of instinct unfolding like muscle memory. She pivoted, set her scope, and fired once. The enemy spotter's lens shattered. Spotter neutralized. Enemy elevation 1200 meters. Her voice was calm, precise, detached from fear. Through the haze, she saw movement. Heat signatures flickering like ghosts among the rocks. 3 targets. 4. No, 6. She exhaled slowly, lined up the crosshairs, and squeezed again. One fell, then another. Her radio buzzed. Rivera's voice clipped, urgent. Specter, we're pinned. We've got wounded. I need suppressing fire, North Sector. Copy. Redirecting fire pattern. She shifted position, rolled behind cover, reloaded, and fired in rhythm. Each shot measured, deliberate. The rifle kicked like an old friend, reminding her she was alive. Her bullets traced invisible paths through fog and fire, buying seconds for the team to regroup. 2, move. I've got your cover. We're blind in the smoke. Follow my tracer. Her voice cut through comms like a metronome, calm amidst chaos. No shouting, no panic, only orders shaped like survival. Adjust south. 30 meters left. Flank the ridge. Their line's shallow. You break it now, or you don't walk out. Rivera's breathing was ragged. Specter, how the hell do you— Just move, Captain. He did. Minutes stretched into eternities. Then the gunfire thinned. A final burst cracked through the air, and silence began to fall again, heavy and suffocating. Smoke drifted low across the valley floor. The fog returned, curling through the bodies and the blackened rocks. Rivera's voice came through faintly. Specter, area secure. We're regrouping. She scanned the ridge one last time, finger hovering above the trigger. No movement, no heat. Only the slow fade of chaos into quiet. Specter 6, Rivera said, his tone different now. Steadier, almost reverent. If we make it out, remind me to never doubt a civilian again. She didn't respond. Just lowered the scope, her face unreadable behind the mask. The valley around them still glowed faintly from burning wreckage, shadows of what had tried to end them. She looked into the darkness beyond, the same cold calm settling over her heart. It wasn't victory she felt. It was inevitability. The war had simply found her again. She keyed her mic one last time. Command, this is Specter 6. Iron Veil has contact. Ambush neutralized. Casualties pending, static hissed back. Then General Abrams' voice, low and tight. Specter, you were not supposed to engage. Her answer came without hesitation. Neither were they. A long pause followed. Then, silence. She powered down the comms, staring into the fog that once hid her grave. Specter 6 was back in her element, unseen, unstoppable. Smoke still clung to the valley floor like a living thing, coiling around boots and rifles, hiding what was lost beneath the fog. The surviving members of Iron Veil staggered through the wreckage. 4 men, 1 woman, a trail of blood marking every step. Specter 6 moved ahead, scanning every ridge. The silence wasn't peace, it was the pause between storms. Captain Rivera's voice came low through the comms, strained. Command, this is Iron Veil Actual. We're down half the unit. Requesting medevac and overwatch support. Copy? Nothing. Just static. He tried again, louder this time. Command, this is— A burst of static swallowed his voice. Then faintly a reply. Signal interference. Coordinates. Unknown contact. The transmission died. Specter crouched beside the comm unit, eyes narrowing. The frequency wasn't just jammed, it was mirroring. Someone was relaying their signal. Her tone cut cold through the channel. Kill the broadcast, now! Rivera blinked. We need extraction. You'll get us killed faster. They're reading our comms. The realization spread across their faces. The kind of cold that starts in the gut. She had seen this before. Kunar, 2010. Same terrain. Same silence. Same betrayal. Only this time, she had lived long enough to recognize the pattern. The wind shifted. A low echo rolled across the cliffs, not thunder this time. Mortar fire. The first shell hit the ridge behind them, erupting in a wall of smoke and flame. Move! Down the canyon now! They ran, boots pounding against loose shale. The canyon walls funneling the sound of each blast until it felt like the mountain itself was breaking apart. Specter took rear guard, firing short bursts to cover the retreat. She could feel the crosshairs on her, an enemy sniper tracking her through fog and chaos. Another explosion. The world tilted sideways. Rivera fell, clutching his arm. Go! Leave me! Specter didn't even look back. Not my kind of ghost story, she muttered, dragging him by the vest, bullets tearing into the dirt around them. The canyon narrowed, firelight reflecting off sheer stone. Every echo became an enemy, every shadow a rifle muzzle. They're everywhere, one soldier shouted. How the hell do they know our path? Specter stopped for half a second, eyes scanning the rock, tracing the curve of each explosion pattern. Then she saw it. Precision. Predictive fire. Someone had fed their route. Exact coordinates, before they'd even touched the ground. She felt the chill crawl up her spine. The same pattern. The same signature. The 2010 betrayal had never ended. It had just changed hands. The comms crackled again. A voice, smooth, taunting, distorted by radio static, filled the channel. Specter 6. Still breathing? I was told you died with your ghosts. The younger soldier froze mid-step, eyes wide. Who the hell is that? Specter didn't answer. Her grip on the rifle tightened, jaw set. She knew that voice. Or maybe it was the memory of one. You left something unfinished here, the voice continued. Only ghosts survived this valley twice. The words hung in the smoke like prophecy. Rivera looked at her, realization dawning. He knows you. Specter's eyes stayed fixed on the cliffs. He shouldn't. Another shot rang out, a sharp clean. The youngest soldier dropped instantly, helmet rolling into the dust. Sniper! High ridge! Rivera shouted, diving for cover. Specter didn't flinch. Angle's off. He's higher. She pressed her back against the canyon wall, calculating. The sound delay told her everything. Wind speed, elevation, direction. He's on the west cliff. 1,400 meters. Same ridge as before. How the hell can you tell? Because I taught them that position. She broke from cover, sprinting through the debris, sliding behind a burnt-out rock formation. A shot missed her shoulder by inches. She dropped to prone, steady breath, scope up, scanning through layers of smoke and shadow. Then, faintly, a glint. Just for a second, she fired once. The rifle cracked like thunder. Silence. The team waited. Nothing moved. Then, slowly, the sniper's radio went dead. Specter exhaled. Not victory, but confirmation. One threat down. 100 left unseen. Rivera crawled to her side, clutching his arm. We've got to move before they regroup. She nodded, eyes never leaving the horizon. They're not regrouping, she said quietly. They're watching how we react. He frowned. Meaning? Meaning this isn't a random hit. We're the message. The canyon began to shake again, this time from the sky. Distant aircraft, maybe drones, circling unseen. Command's betrayal wasn't rumor anymore. It was live. She tapped her comms once, whispering into static. General Abrams, if you can hear me, check your encryption logs. Someone's feeding coordinates from inside. No response. Just faint breathing. And then a whispered word that froze her blood. Confirmed. The line cut. She stared into the distance, expression hollow. For a long moment, no one spoke. Finally, Rivera asked, What now? Specter rose, slinging her rifle. Now? She looked toward the cliffs, smoke glowing red around her silhouette. Now we stop running. She led them forward through fire and stone. the last of Iron Veil following her ghost-like through the valley that had already buried her once. Behind them, the voice on the dead radio whispered again, faint, fading, almost human. Only ghosts survived this valley twice. Night fell heavy on the valley, a black sky without mercy. The storm had passed, but the air still smelled of iron and smoke. Specter crouched beside a half-buried comms terminal, its metal scorched, its screen flickering with broken code. Every line of static was a whisper of the past. Every frequency, a memory clawing its way back. She adjusted the receiver, isolating one encrypted channel. A voice emerged, faint, clipped, authoritative. "Confirm strike vector. Coordinates. Same grid as last contact. No survivors." She froze. The signature on the transmission header was unmistakable. Cole Hadrick, the same officer who had commanded her unit in 2010. The same man who had ordered a withdrawal that left her and 6 others surrounded, marked as expendable, and now he was doing it again. Specter's pulse steadied, her mind shifting into the cold rhythm of a sniper's patience. She rewired the terminal manually, intercepting the live feed. Through the faint hiss of static, she could hear 2 officers speaking somewhere far away, perhaps at a field command post. "We do this clean. Airstrike covers everything. No trail, no names. And Specter Six? If she's alive, she won't be for long." Specter muted the line. For a long moment, she just stared at the dust beneath her. Gloves! Her reflection blinked back at her in the cracked monitor. The same eyes that once looked down, a scope on this same soil 15 years ago. History was repeating itself. Only this time she had the frequency in her hands. She keyed the mic open, her voice calm, steady, surgical. "Colonel Hadrick," silence. Then the line crackled with disbelief. "Who is this?" "You know who it is?" A pause. Breathing on the other end. Then, recognition like a ghost recognized by its own sin. "Specter Six, that is impossible." "You left it impossible the last time, sir, but I survived." Her tone carried no emotion, just truth sharpened into steel. "You left them to die once," she continued. "I am not letting it happen again." For a moment, the only sound was the soft hum of wind moving through broken comms. Then Hadrick's voice changed, colder now, defensive. "You were written off for a reason. You were compromised. You jeopardized the mission." "The mission," she repeated quietly, "was survival. You called it expendable. You do not understand the decisions command has to make." "I understand exactly what they cost." Flashbacks flickered, night vision green overlaid with muzzle flashes. The mountain burning around her, 6 names cut off mid-transmission, her own hands shaking as she marked the last coordinates before the blackout. "Do you know what it sounds like, Colonel?" she said softly. "When a man realizes no one is coming?" No answer, only static, heavy, ashamed. Rivera watched from a few meters away, silent. He had never seen her speak like this, voice measured, like every syllable carried the weight of the fallen. Specter leaned closer to the mic, the moonlight catching the scar across her cheek. "You buried the truth once, but I carried it out." Hadrick's tone turned sharp, the cornered instinct of command under exposure. "You have no proof. That operation was sealed." "Not anymore." She switched channels, rerouting the live intercept directly into the command network. Every officer on the same frequency now heard his words, his orders, his intent to erase them. Panic rippled through the encrypted feed. Voices shouting, systems cutting off. "You do not know what you are doing, Corporal." "I do," she interrupted quietly. "Finishing what you started." Then came the sound, the distant whine of engines above the clouds. She looked up. The strike he had ordered was already inbound. "He is going to bury us!" Rivera hissed, grabbing her shoulder. "We have to move." She shook her head, eyes never leaving the sky. "No, if we run, the truth dies under it. And if we stay, then at least it is seen." She adjusted the radio gain, broadcasting across open channels, a last act of defiance. "To any listening station, this is Specter 6 of Iron Veil. Airstrike vector inbound. Unauthorized command signature, code Hadrick Delta. Confirm civilian override and abort. Repeat, abort strike. The valley echoed her words back in fragments, like ghosts carrying the message through the mountains. For a moment, it felt like no one heard. Then, a distant response. A single voice. Copy Specter 6, intercepting orders. You are not alone. Above, the engines broke formation. The sky trembled but did not fall. Specter exhaled, slow and deliberate. Her fingers loosened around the mic. Hadrick's voice returned, stripped of command, bare with fury. You have no idea what you've done. No, she replied softly. I know exactly what I stopped. Her hands trembled as she powered down the comms. The adrenaline faded, replaced by something colder. Memory, guilt, relief. She turned toward the canyon, where the surviving soldiers waited. Their faces were tired, soot-streaked, alive. The radio hissed one last time before going silent. A faint whisper. Maybe interference, maybe conscience. Even ghosts bleed when truth is near. The line went dead. Specter looked out into the black horizon. Somewhere beyond those peaks, the man who had written her death twice was now realizing that the dead had finally spoken. She wiped the dust from her rifle, slung it over her shoulder, and whispered into the silence. This time, the ghosts keep the record. The valley burned with ghostlight. Flares drifted across the black sky, bleeding red into the dust-choked air. Every flicker painted the ruins in flashes, broken stone, shattered helmets, faces streaked with soot and resolve. Specter stood at the center of it all, headset crackling with dead frequencies. Command was silent. The world above had turned its back again. She exhaled once, steady, and spoke into the squad net. We hold this ground until the rotors arrive. Copy? The survivors nodded. 5 left now. Exhausted, bleeding, still standing. No one questioned her orders. Not anymore. She moved like instinct, scanning terrain, mapping shadows. Her voice carried through the storm of noise, measured, surgical. Davis, you cover the East Ridge. Rivera, take the flank and mark fallback lines. I want suppressive bursts, not panic fire. Yes, ma'am. Even Rivera, who once doubted her every breath, answered without hesitation. Leadership was no longer in rank. It was in rhythm. The rhythm of someone who refused to die quietly. Specter pulled up the portable receiver, punching in coordinates by hand. The satellite relay was fried. The uplink jammed. She bypassed both using her old field encryption, relic code no one remembered but her. She transmitted a single ping to the nearest drone patrol. Request LZ, priority, emergency evac. Coordinates incoming manually. The screen flickered. No reply. She stared at it for 3 seconds, then powered it off. Extraction or not, she murmured. We finish what we started. Her eyes swept the valley floor. Movement. Faint shapes slipping through the fog. Insurgents advancing under cover of smoke and silence. The war had found them again. Positions! She ordered. Rifles locked. Sandbags dragged into shape. A perimeter born from will, not walls. She took the high ground, a jagged outcrop overlooking the kill zone. The rifle rested on stone like an old friend finding its mark again, through her scope. The world narrowed. One breath, one trigger, one truth at a time. The first shot cracked like a heartbeat in the dark. A silhouette dropped mid-stride. Another darted behind cover. Then the valley erupted. Muzzle flashes blinking like lightning, tracer rounds stitching the air. Specter's voice cut through the chaos. 2 o'clock! Suppress and shift! Do not waste ammo! Her tone had no edge, no panic, just command carved from experience. Rivera returned fire beside her, gritting his teeth. They're closing in from the south ridge. Let them. That ridge is shallow. Shallow? Perfect range. She turned her rifle, fired twice, 2 shots, 2 collapses. Dust and fire swallowed the line. Grenades shook the ground. Fragments clattered off helmets. The survivors moved like parts of one body, each gesture mirrored by trust earned in the crucible. Specter shifted position, crawling across gravel slick with ash. She reached Davis, whose arm was bleeding through the sleeve. "Stay with it," she said quietly, pressing gauze against the wound. "We're not getting out of this, are we?" "Then we make sure they do not either." Her voice was calm, not defiance, not pride. Just fact, the kind that holds a line when logic says to run. Flares streaked overhead, painting the smoke in amber. For a moment, it almost looked beautiful, like sunrise fighting through ruin. Specter's scope found movement again, 5 hostiles advancing in staggered formation. She inhaled once, exhaled slow. Each shot came like punctuation in a sentence written in silence. 1, 2, 3. Rivera watched from behind cover, shaking his head. "Ma'am, you're not human." She did not answer. Minutes dragged like hours. The enemy pressed closer, their shouts echoing through the valley. Specter switched frequencies, whispering into the comms. "Iron Veil, adjust positions 10 meters back." "Draw them in." "Copy." They moved under her direction. Not with fear, but precision. When the insurgents broke through the smoke, they met coordinated fire. Sharp. Surgical bursts that tore the assault apart before it reached the sandbags. By the 10th minute, silence fell again. Only the hiss of cooling metal and the faint buzz of dying comms remained. Specter lowered her rifle slowly, scanning the ridge. Bodies scattered among the rocks, men who had thought they were chasing survivors, not defenders. Rivera approached, limping, rifle slung. "You held the line, Specter." "We all did." He looked around, the others sitting in the dirt, too tired to celebrate. "Command will not even log this," she nodded. "Then we will." She pulled a small, dented field journal from her vest pocket, the one she had carried since Kunar, 2010. The same pages that once recorded names of the fallen. She tore a blank page, wrote coordinates, names, and one line at the bottom. "Held the line," until the sky returned. Then she sealed it, pressed it into Rivera's hand. "If I go down, that page goes home." He nodded. No words left in the distance, faint at first. Then growing, the low thrum of rotor blades. Specter looked up. Through the smoke, the outline of a helicopter took shape, its lights flickering like salvation through storm. "Extraction inbound," Rivera breathed. Specter raised her rifle one last time, firing a single flare into the night sky. The red bloom spread above them, cutting through the black. For the first time in hours, she allowed herself to close her eyes. Her whisper barely carried over the wind. "Leadership is earned when fear breaks." And in that ruined valley, where command had failed and ghosts had led the living, her voice lingered, steady, unbroken, as the rescue lights descended through the smoke. The wind had turned colder. Smoke drifted across the ridge like tattered flags of defeat, curling through shattered trees and burned-out crates. The sound of rotor blades was still distant, maybe 20 minutes out. For Specter 6 and what remained of Iron Veil, 20 minutes felt like forever. Ammunition was running dry. Half the rifles were jammed from dust and heat. The night reeked of cordite and iron, the scent that always came before the end. Specter knelt beside a half-collapsed barrier, counting what was left in her pouch. 5 rounds, a single smoke grenade. She loaded the rounds one by one, each click sharp in the silence. "Extraction ETA 20 minutes, Rivera called from the far trench. His voice cracked, raw from dust and shouting. "We hold until then," she answered. It was not a promise. It was an order carved from habit, from the muscle memory of survival. The first shell came without warning. A deep whistle, a heartbeat. Then the ground split open beside her. The blast threw her off her feet, heat searing across her shoulder. She hit the dirt hard, the world ringing in her ears. For a moment, there was nothing but white noise, smoke, weight, silence. Then the pain came. Sharp, hot, alive. Shrapnel had torn across her side, just below the ribs. Blood darkened the sand beneath her glove. She gritted her teeth, forcing herself up to one knee. "Specter, you're hit!" Rivera shouted. "Stay on your sector!" she barked, voice iron through the pain. Her hands trembled as she reloaded. The rifle's stock was slick with blood, but she steadied it anyway, sighting through the haze. Through the scope, insurgents were advancing again. Silhouettes against the burning skyline. Shadows of persistence. She fired once, missed, adjusted, fired again. This time, the shadow fell. The young medic, barely more than a boy, crawled through the smoke toward her, dragging his aid bag. His helmet was too large. It rattled when he moved. "Ma'am, let me patch that up." "No. You're bleeding bad." "Then make it count." He hesitated, eyes wide with fear. Specter looked at him, not unkindly, but with a calm that silenced panic. "We finish what we start." The boy nodded, swallowed hard, and went back to the wounded near the sandbags. She pressed her hand against her wound. The blood was warm. Too warm. It soaked through her gloves, mixed with the grit and frost that crept down from the peaks. Every breath came shallow now, but her trigger finger never slowed. She spoke into the radio between shots, each word deliberate. "Iron Veil to command. Valley secured. Request extraction confirmation. Only static." She tried again, her voice rougher. "Command, this is Specter 6, holding the line." The signal crackled, fractured, then a faint voice broke through. "Specter 6, confirm location." Her chest tightened. It was General Abrams. She leaned into the mic, forcing her lungs to hold steady. "Grid 9 Delta, perimeter compromised but contained. 4 survivors operational." Silence again. "Then you are wounded." "Negative, sir. Still functional. Hold position." "Air cover inbound." Her eyes flicked to the horizon, the faint red of tracer fire cutting the night apart. "Make it quick," she whispered, half to him, half to herself. The minutes bled away like seconds. Every sound became distant, muffled by the pounding in her ears. She could feel her pulse in the wound now, each beat sending another trickle of warmth down her side. But she kept firing. Each shot slower than the last. Each breath shallower. The world narrowed, just the rifle, the smoke, and the endless rhythm of defense. A figure crawled beside her. Rivera again, face streaked with soot. "You need to fall back. You're bleeding out. If I fall, they break the line. Then we hold it together." He positioned his rifle beside hers, shoulder to shoulder. Their muzzles flashed in tandem, 2 flames against the tide. The insurgents wavered, momentum breaking under precision fire. Those still standing began to scatter. The assault faltered, not defeated by numbers but by will. Specter lowered her rifle, hands shaking uncontrollably now. Her vision blurred at the edges, the world swaying. She pressed the radio once more. "Command, this is Specter 6, line held. Extraction zone secured." A long pause. Then the general's voice, clearer this time. "We have you on thermal." "Hold, Specter." "You did it." Her lips moved, but no sound came out. She smiled faintly, eyes fixed on the horizon where searchlights cut through smoke like dawn breaking early. The medic ran back toward her, skidding through the dirt. "Stay with me, ma'am, please." She turned her head slightly, voice faint but steady. "Get them home." Then she looked toward the ridge where the first helicopter broke through the haze. Its light swept over the field, catching her in a red glow. Dust, blood, and resolve blended into one motionless form. Her hand tightened once around the rifle grip. As if anchoring her to the ground, she refused to surrender. The radio buzzed again, a whisper through static. "Specter 6, holding line." Then, silence. The blades grew louder, washing the valley in stormlight. But in that small pocket of earth, where blood met frost and courage met quiet, the war paused to listen, and the mountains remembered. The valley was quiet again, too quiet. Smoke curled upward in fragile ribbons, drifting between jagged ridgelines that glowed faintly with the first trace of dawn. The firefight had slowed to silence, save for the whisper of wind across broken rifles and torn flags. Specter 6 lay half-crouched behind a fallen slab of stone, one hand pressed to her bleeding side. Every movement burned like fire. She could feel the warmth seeping through her vest, a heartbeat too slow, too heavy. But she wasn't done. Not yet. Her eyes scanned the ridgeline through the fading haze. Something was wrong. The survivors were pulling back toward the extraction point, but the air still felt watched. That kind of silence didn't belong to peace. It belonged to a scope. Through the shattered lens of her rifle's sight, she caught it. A flicker. A glint of reflected glass just beyond a crumbled boulder across the valley. A sniper. Patient. Waiting. The ghost she had been hunting all night had finally revealed himself. For a moment, neither moved. Two shadows in the same silence, divided by years of war and a few 100 meters of dust. Specter adjusted her breathing. Slow, deliberate, counting in her head. Inhale, hold, exhale. Her scope trembled slightly, then steadied. Her world narrowed again, just as it had 15 years ago in Kunar. The sound of the bass faded. The burning pain vanished. Only the sight, the breath, and the trigger remained. She saw flashes of the past in the stillness. Corporal Jennings, grinning through dirt after their first mission. Sergeant Vale, who used to hum old rock songs while loading mags. The radio static of her last day in 2010, when command said help was coming, and it never did. They all lingered now, behind her, unseen but present. Specter whispered softly, voice barely audible. "You're still here, aren't you?" The valley didn't answer, but the wind shifted, almost like acknowledgement. She exhaled. Through the scope, the enemy sniper shifted ever so slightly, a shadow within a shadow. Whoever he was good. Calm. Still. A mirror of her own past self. She waited. Let him breathe first. Let him blink. Let him think she was broken. Seconds turned to minutes. The sunrise bled over the mountain ridge, gold light spilling across the field of ruin. Her breathing slowed. The pain dulled. Time folded in on itself. She wasn't Corporal Lena Voss anymore. She wasn't Specter Six, the ghost of Kunar. She was just a soldier with one last shot left, and no fear of missing. The faintest shimmer. A tiny movement in his mirage. That was all she needed. Her finger curved against the trigger. Smooth, steady. The rifle exhaled with her. The shot cracked across the valley, clean and final. Through her scope, she saw the figure jolt backward, a cloud of dust rising, then still. Direct hit. No celebration. No satisfaction. Just silence. She exhaled once more, lowering the rifle. The ridge beyond was clear now. No more shadows, no more glints. Only the mountains returning to quiet. Her vision swam. The colors of dawn began to blur, gold melting into gray. She could feel her pulse slowing, the cold creeping deeper through her armor. Rivera's voice crackled faintly through her radio. "Specter, do you copy?" "Ridge is clear." "We're almost at LZ." She smiled weakly, eyes still on the horizon. "Target neutralized," she whispered. "Line secure." The radio hissed, then steadied. "Hold on, ma'am, birds are inbound." "Just stay with us!" Her hand slipped from the rifle, fingers brushing the metal dog tags at her neck. They were scratched, dulled with age. She thumbed the one that still had her name. Voss. Lena Emma's small chuckle escaped her lips. Quiet, tired. "Never thought I'd see this sunrise again." She leaned back against the rock, the faint hum of rotors now rolling over the peaks. The first helicopter appeared through the mist, its lights piercing the morning fog. Soldiers waved smoke signals from below. The extraction had arrived. Specter tried to lift her radio, but her arm refused to move. Her eyes followed the aircraft instead, silhouettes against the pale sky. She whispered softly, almost to the wind, "You made it home." Another voice, faint in memory. General Abrams, years younger. She never missed a shot. Her breathing slowed further, the mountain air filling her lungs one last time. The rifle rested across her lap, barrel cooling in the morning light. For the first time in years, her face softened, not in pain, but in release. She turned her gaze toward the east, where the sun broke clean through the haze. Her last shot was not revenge. the narrator's voice would say. It was peace. The helicopter touched down seconds later. Rivera and the medic sprinted toward her position. Calling her name over and over, they found her where the smoke met the dawn, still seated against the stone, rifle in hand, eyes open toward the horizon. The radio beside her crackled one final time. Specter 6. Mission complete. And then, just static. The mountain was quiet once more. The valley had gone silent again. Only the slow thump of helicopter rotors broke through the heavy air, blending with the faint crackle of distant fires dying in the wind. Morning light crept over the wrecked ridge, washing the battlefield in pale gold, a light too gentle for the ground it touched. The extraction was complete. The survivors, what few remained, were being lifted one by one into the waiting aircraft. Their faces were streaked with grime and disbelief. No one spoke. No one dared to. Below them, the valley held its own silence, not of victory, but of debt. General Abrams stepped off the last chopper, boots sinking into dust still warm from gunfire. He ignored the medic calling his name, ignored the staff officer running toward him with casualty reports. His eyes searched the field ahead, through the haze, the smoke, the glint of metal that caught the sun like memory. There she was. Specter 6 lay near the shattered ridge, half sitting against the same stone that had shielded her hours ago. Her rifle rested beside her, scope cracked but steady, barrel still dark from the final shot. She was conscious, barely. Eyes open, fixed toward the sky as if watching something far above the clouds. The general froze mid-step. For a heartbeat, he was back in another time. Younger, angrier, standing over a flag-draped coffin that had never been filled. He walked closer, each footfall measured, deliberate, heavy. When he reached her, she tilted her head slightly. No salute, no words. Just a faint recognition in her eyes, the kind that needs no explanation. He knelt down beside her, his shadow falling across the dust between them. For the first time since the war began, the general did not see a soldier or a ghost from classified reports. He saw the woman the system had erased, her lips parted, barely a whisper escaping. Kunar's quiet now. He swallowed hard, voice cracking despite years of control. You finished it. She gave the faintest smile. They finished it. I just stayed long enough to see it through. Her breathing faltered, the air around them trembling with the low hum of rotors approaching again. The medic approached cautiously, holding a stretcher, but the general raised a hand. Not yet. He leaned closer. Do you remember what I said that day? In that briefing room? Her eyes flicked toward him, a weak glint of humor in the pain. You said, no ghosts come back. He nodded slowly. You proved me wrong. A long pause settled between them, thick with the weight of all the unspoken years. Then, softly, he said her name. Not her rank, not her call sign. Just her name. Lena. Her gaze softened, a breath catching in her throat. It was the first time she had heard it spoken in over a decade. The medic moved forward again, kneeling to check her vitals. Specter's hand slipped slightly from the rifle grip, fingers brushing the metal tags that hung loose around her neck. One broke free, a weathered tag, edges dulled, letters fading but still readable. Specter 6. It fell to the dirt with a quiet metallic ring. The sound cut through the morning like a bell in a cathedral. Every nearby soldier turned, watching in silence. No one moved. No one dared speak. The general picked up the tag, thumb brushing over the etched name. The metal was cold, yet it burned against his skin. He looked at her, voice low. They buried you once. They will not do it again. She tried to reply, but her strength was gone. Her hand trembled slightly, then stilled on the stock of her rifle. The medic checked her pulse again, faint but present. Evac ready! Someone shouted from the ridge. The general nodded once. Carefully, the medic lifted her onto the stretcher, every motion deliberate and respectful. Her rifle was placed atop her chest, hands folded over it. The general followed, them toward the helicopter, holding the dog tag in his palm as if it were made of glass. When they reached the chopper, he paused at the open door. Wind from the rotors whipped through the air, scattering ash and dust around them. He leaned in close, speaking above the noise. "Rest now, Specter 6. The valley remembers." Thupper. Aircraft rose slowly, its shadow sweeping across the scarred ground. Below, soldiers stood at attention, saluting the figure inside, not out of command, but out of something deeper: respect, awe, guilt. As the helicopter vanished into the morning light, a hush fell over the field once more. The general stood alone at the edge of the ridge. The sun had climbed fully over the peaks now, painting everything in amber. He turned the dog tag over in his hand, the engraved letters catching the light. A name that once vanished from every report, every archive, every wall of remembrance, now returned in full. He slipped the tag into his pocket, straightened his uniform, and whispered to no one in particular, "The legend that command erased now has a face again." The wind answered in a low sigh, carrying the faint echo of her last transmission, the one no one would ever delete. Specter 6, holding line. 3 weeks later, the wind over Kunar carried no scent of gunfire, only pine, dust, and silence. The forward base had been rebuilt in fragments. The walls were patched, the flags replaced, the radios humming again. Yet beneath the surface, something had shifted. Every soldier felt it, though none could name it. This morning, the base stood still. No drills, no movement. Just rows of men and women in full-dress uniform, standing shoulder to shoulder under a cold, bright sky. At the center of the yard stood a black marble pedestal. Upon it, a folded flag, perfectly creased, resting beside a polished nameplate. Lena Voss, Specter 6. The air hung heavy with restraint. No speeches echoed across the compound. No music played. The silence itself served as the eulogy. The survivors from Operation Iron Veil stood nearest the front. Rivera, his arm still in a sling, kept his eyes fixed on the flag. The young medic beside him, the one who had carried her from the ridge, clenched her cap in both hands, jaw trembling but unbroken. They owed their lives to a ghost who never demanded recognition. General Abrams stepped forward, alone. His boots struck the concrete with slow, deliberate weight. He paused before the pedestal and removed his cap. The light caught the gray in his hair, the tired lines beneath his eyes. He did not carry notes. He did not speak. For a long moment, he simply looked at the folded flag, and the rifle resting behind it, displayed inside a crystal case. The rifle was cleaned, repaired, and mounted upright. The steel plate beneath it bore a simple engraving: "For those who fight unseen." No rank, no unit, no commendations. Only the truth that mattered. The general raised his hand slowly to his brow. His salute cut through the morning like a blade of silence. Every soldier followed, their movements synchronized, not by command, but by conviction. The sound of 100 gloves brushing foreheads created a soft rustle, like the whisper of leaves. He held the salute longer than regulation allowed, as if time itself had paused to bear witness. When his hand finally lowered, the base remained still. No one moved. No one wanted to break the moment. Behind him, the memorial wall stretched across the courtyard, a new section added since the operation. Carved into its surface were dozens of names, etched deep enough to last through decades of rain and dust. At the very end of the list, separated slightly from the others, was one final inscription: Specter 6. Status: found. Later, as the sun began to sink behind the distant peaks, the general walked alone toward the hangar. In his hand, he carried a small velvet box. Inside it, the dog tag he had kept from that morning. He placed it gently beside the rifle case. the tag gleaming under the pale light. Then he turned toward the open field beyond the wire fence, where the horizon broke into ridges and scars that had once hidden war. There, newly marked on the official maps, was a new name printed in clean black letters: Specter Ridge. The mountain where she fell now carried her memory in stone. As dusk deepened, the base lights flickered on one by one, washing the memorial yard in amber glow. Soldiers lingered, speaking in hushed tones, sharing fragments of what little they knew. Rivera approached the rifle case, his eyes tracing the barrel that had once spoken for her. "She never missed a shot," he murmured. "Not even this one," the medic beside him nodded quietly. "She made sure the rest of us came home." Rivera exhaled, a breath between pride and grief. "Home feels different now." They stood together in silence, watching their reflections shimmer across the glass that sealed her rifle, like two ghosts visiting a third. Across the yard, General Abrams remained still. His gaze stayed fixed on the horizon, on that jagged line of stone and shadow. He could almost hear her voice again, calm, measured, unwavering. "We finish what we start." He closed his eyes, letting the echo fade into the evening wind. The loudspeakers remained silent, but somewhere above the mountains, a faint hum of aircraft passed through the clouds, a sound too distant to be real, too familiar to ignore. The soldiers looked up instinctively, half expecting to see a figure in the mist. But there was nothing. Only light, only air. The general whispered softly under his breath, words not meant for anyone but her. "Sometimes ghosts guard the living." The flag rippled once, as if in answer, and then the wind carried the last of the day's warmth across the yard. Soft, brief, eternal. The ceremony ended. The men dispersed. The silence remained. That night, a small candle burned beside her nameplate long after the others had gone out. No one claimed responsibility. No one admitted lighting it, but by morning it was gone, only a faint trace of wax left behind, glistening like tears beneath the sunrise over Specter Ridge. The dawn broke gently over Kunar Ridge. The mountains no longer burned. The air was still, save for the soft whistle of wind weaving through the canyons where men once shouted, bled, and prayed. The sky turned pale gold, spilling light across the memorial yard like a slow heartbeat returning to life. General Abrams walked alone. His cap hung at his side, his steps deliberate, the sound of boots on gravel echoing through the still base. Behind him, the barracks were quiet, soldiers still asleep. The world still unaware that a chapter had quietly closed. Ahead of him stood the wall, black marble, cold, eternal. Each name etched with precision, each letter a story sealed in stone. Morning light danced across the surface, glinting over the carved names as though the fallen themselves shimmered through. He reached the end of the wall, the final inscription. Specter Six, Lena Voss. The letters caught the rising sun, glowing faintly, almost alive. He stood there for a long time. His hand rose slowly, resting against the engraved name. The marble was cold beneath his palm, too cold for someone whose memory still burned. The wind brushed past, carrying with it faint whispers from the mountains. Perhaps it was the echo of her voice or the breath of the valley itself. No one could tell any more. He closed his eyes. They called her Specter because she moved like silence. His voice, low and weathered, carried softly through the empty courtyard. They feared her because she never missed. He paused, swallowing the ache that had no name. But they remembered her, because she never left anyone behind. Somewhere nearby, the base flag stirred. The fabric cracked faintly in the breeze, rising half-mast under the light. The general's eyes lifted toward it, watching the stripes shift and ripple. For a moment, he saw her again, standing in the old training yard, quiet among the noise, unshaken by mockery, her rifle slung over her shoulder like a promise. He remembered the first time he heard her call sign, how the room had fallen silent, how the air had changed. He understood now why. Some call signs are earned by skill. Hers was earned by sacrifice. He turned slightly, looking across the horizon. The mountains stretched wide and endless, ridges upon ridges, fading into the haze. One stood higher than the rest, newly marked on every map, Specter Ridge. He had approved the name himself. Not as a tribute, not as an order, but as a confession that some ghosts deserved to stay. At its peak, dawn shimmered through a thin layer of cloud, painting the stone with color that looked almost like the flash of a rifle scope catching the sun. He smiled faintly at the thought. "Still watching, aren't you?" he whispered. Behind him, footsteps approached, Rivera and the young medic standing quietly a few paces back. Neither spoke. They carried no rifles, no orders, only silence. The general nodded once, and they returned the gesture. He reached into his pocket, pulled out the old dog tag, the one marked Specter 6. Its edges were dulled from time, but the letters remained clear. He placed it beneath her name on the wall, pressing it lightly against the stone until it stayed there, glinting in the morning sun. "You can rest now, Corporal," he said softly. "Your post is secure. The camera would pull back now." Slowly, as the score swells, a solemn orchestral rise, built on soft strings, and a single drum beat echoing like a heartbeat through the valley. The general's figure shrinks in the frame, standing alone before the wall, the mountains towering behind him. The wind picks up, scattering dust and light across the yard. His silhouette remains motionless, a soldier saluting a ghost. The light climbs higher. The wind fades, then a voice, her voice, distant, gentle, almost imagined. Specter 6, holding line. The camera tilts upward, rising through the morning mist, past the base, past the ridge, past the scarred valleys now healed by silence. From above, the world looks peaceful again. The roads wind like old scars. The rivers shimmer like veins of silver through the earth. The narration fades in. Calm, solemn, final. They called her Specter because she moved like silence. They feared her because she never missed. But they remembered her because she never left anyone behind. The music swells softly beneath those words, strings fading into the hum of wind. The camera pans over the mountains, their peaks bathed in golden light. Far in the distance, a faint glint reflects off a solitary rifle mounted atop the ridge. No movement, no sound, only light, only air. The narrator's final line settles over the landscape like prayer. The war forgot her name, but the men she saved never did. Fade to black. A single name remains on screen. Specter 6. Silence. Then, the soft click of a bolt being drawn, echoing once through the dark. Fade out completely.